When it comes to EVE Online, every player wants to know the most effective tactic available. You want to know the meta. The meta controls everything. It determines what will and will not happen. Knowing the meta will alter your views, make you question your reality. It might even make you laugh. And now, you're part of it. You're watching The Meta Show.
Is that better, guys? Oh, man. You missed my whole intro. Yay. There we go. All right. Welcome to the Meta Show, guys. The premiere Twitch stream with the latest news of the week on EVE Online and the Imperium. Whether you're a seasoned player or just getting started, this is the place to go for your expert analysis and deep discussions and the hottest takes on everything happening in game. We are getting into CSM19 candidates today. And first up, we have Dudch, One Eye. And we are going to let him talk about his history and coming into the game, a little bit about his platform, and then, of course, I have some questions for him. So, Dudch, tell us all about yourself. All right, hold on one second. Hold on one second. I got you. You are not getting caught by... You are not getting caught. I need to capture your audio, I guess. Oh, no. Oh, man. This would happen to me. All right. There we go. Sorry, you guys. I'm trying. I'm yeah. There we go. Okay. Betty is not great with OBS, just to be honest. don't judge me. All right, we're almost there. Almost there. Almost there. Okay, I think maybe now they can hear you.
Chat.
Let's test it out.
Can you hear me? Seems like they can.
Okay, there we go. All right.
Okay. You have a bit of an echo. Are you being captured twice?
I might be. Are you still able to hear me?
Now I can't hear you.
Okay. Hopefully that Fix it.
Yep, I hear you now.
Okay. There's like 5 Bettys. I know, you guys. I'm sorry.
The more the merrier.
All right, DJ, take it away. Tell us about yourself. Let us know what your platform is.
Hi, I'm Dudch One Eye. I fly with the Brave Collective. I've been playing Eve for 10 years, and in those years, I've tried most of Eve and settled on the things that I like the most. I have a platform that is heavily on new player inclusivity and basically all types of inclusivity. And in addition, I like to talk about my favorite parts of the game and how I think improving the parts of the game that I like could improve the game as a whole. I don't, not to just make more ISK. I think that I want more fights and I want more explosions over important objectives. That's what I like in the game.
So I know that you're focusing on leadership. Can you tell us a little bit about your experience and your leadership roles within the nullsec alliances, and how do you leverage that with your representation of all players of all size groups within the CSM?
I put that on my CSM page kind of as a CV point. I think that in terms of leadership, I do a lot of clerical stuff. I do a lot of logistics. I'm behind the scenes trying to fix things. And it means that I have to speak to a lot of players and a lot of new players and brave newbies. And I also have to work a lot with other groups in our coalition. And at least gives me a perspective to find out what other people think is lacking in the game or could be improved on, what would make them want to play the game more, and also work together to find a compromise solution that we can work with.
I know
it sounds very politician-y for sure.
It does.
It kind of is.
Well, getting into the other side of that we always think is really politician-y, talk about your improving quality of life for players. What specific changes are you looking to push for to benefit smaller alliances and newer players?
In particular, I think that the newest players need to be able to find the small alliances and the groups that they're going to fly with immediately after finishing the new player experience. Definitely. I think that the current system makes it difficult to match up with the people who are going to give you the best experience. I have played through the new player experience a couple of times recently in order to see what the game would suggest for me. And if I go to a new player, well, if I go to the Corp Finder, I really feel like that's the first place where it breaks down. If you're looking for a new Corp, the Corps suggest that they do everything. They say they're into PvP, they say they're into PvP, they say they're into mining, exploration, wormholes, hauling. They're active in all time zones. I think that the Corp Finder should narrow down and get a new interface so that people can accurately describe what they do as a Corp and find the new players who want to do that thing rather than be a catch-all and suggest that they do all things.
I absolutely agree with you on that one for sure. I love the new players and working with them and helping them. So that would be great if we could have that. You highlighted botting and RMT as some critical issue points. What steps are you going to advocate for to combat these problems?
I feel like that's an ever-present issue here. I think that even in addition to botting and RMT, there's just a lot of stuff in the game that is maybe too easy to do without even thinking about it. I think that if people go into nullsec and they see people just spinning Ishtars, even if it is a player doing it, it might be hard to tell the difference. And that's a failure of a lot of the content, where we want engaging content that makes us pay attention as players. We have to think about what we're doing. And if the content was like that, there certainly would be less options for automation. I also think in terms of huge ISK faucets that come from high-level Wormhole Space, Pochven, home fronts, etc., it's also so lucrative, and that presents an opportunity for RMT or multi-boxing extreme amounts of characters in order to get money that was balanced around being given to multiple players. Certainly, there's nothing in the game that ought to be 3.5 billion ISK worth of payout for 10 minutes of work for one player. Those rates are just too high. And if the content were difficult enough that it would require multiple players to do it, and engaging enough that you wouldn't be able to do it as one player with 10 accounts, that would be a good thing.
Yeah, definitely. I'm curious as far as sovereignty mechanics and how nullsec may evolve. What changes would you suggest to make the nullsec play more dynamic?
Last year in the campaign, we asked for passive moon mining. And when we asked for passive moon mining, we thought of the passive moon mining as it used to be when I started out playing 10 years ago, where we would regularly have big epic fights over a particularly lucrative moon. And currently we're not really fighting over metanoxes. And with the new system, nobody's fighting over skyhooks. We are getting something in the newest patch, but we want stuff to fight over. And the people who oppose us do want to fight us over our resources. It just has to be presented in such a way that we're both encouraged to show up and fight with our ships, rather than having one side attack to no defense, or something that is impossible to attack and we just sit passively and get wealthy without playing the game.
So, last question, because we have other candidates that we want to talk to today, but how would you balance advocating for the larger coalitions while making sure that the independent groups also get a voice within the CSM?
I think it might sound a little bit hypocritical to say, given that I am a part of a larger coalition, but I think that that is the end state of a system that is particularly conducive to having large coalitions. I don't honestly think that they need to be advocated for. I think that a lot of people would love if we could break up and have medium-sized groups all over the place and have temporarily formed coalitions to fight each other, much more so rather than having one half of a donut each where we are only fighting on the extremities. We see now that there are very few small groups in nullsec in particular, because they're squeezed out and forced to join a side, take a side, or get kicked out.
Yeah.
And nobody really wants that. But we also feel somewhat forced to do it, lest the other side do it in this perpetual arms race. I think focusing for now on the medium and smaller groups will hopefully shift the meta towards many medium groups in the future.
Oh, that's great. Any final thoughts?
Remember to vote. Remember to fill out the entire ballot. Please talk to me if you have any questions. I can be reached anywhere Eva's played. And thank you for having me.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us. We are going to switch over to our next CSM candidate, and I will just tell you this is going to be a cringy process, so I apologize. Thank you, Dudch. We'll see you again soon.
Yeah, bye.
Give us 1 second to get the camera going. Hi. Welcome. We are, I just need to, there we go. I know that you guys are seeing this all being cringy right now. I'll fix that for you guys. Let me get your vocals in here because that's the last thing that I didn't do. Oh, yeah, absolutely. Let's see. Let's make sure that we can hear you. No, we can't hear you yet. Oh, that's great. There we go. Now we should hear you.
What's the stream under so I can just have the chat up just in case there's any.
It's on Imperium News Network. Imperium News on just Twitch. All right. So our next candidate is Frippy, who is part of Goonswarm. Frippy, welcome. I'm so glad you joined us today. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your platform in running for CSM19?
So, my name's Frippy. I am a member of Karma Fleet, which is a member of Goonswarm. I live in Nullsec, and my platform is that of multi-region wide improvement, not just that of improving Nullsec, which is quite unusual for nullset candidates. In terms of what I mean by that, my main areas that I would put forth for improvement would be the new player experience, more opportunities within high sec, and also some reworks within mechanics of some nullsec activities.
Awesome. I want to dig in a little bit more on your platform on improving high sec and PvE for new players. What changes are you looking to advocate to make the game more engaging for the PvE side of new player experience?
So the PvE side of new player experience, one of the main ideas I've had is there's already mission agents within the game and the current tutorial that we have. However, they don't teach you a lot of information on how to do certain things like level 1s, level 2s, level 3s. So what I was thinking is in the starting areas in which new players sort of spawn in after you've done a tutorial, have certain mission agents in the stations that teach specific areas of information that are vital to the improvement and development of new players so that they can go forth and complete PvE activities and start earning ISK.
Oh, that's actually pretty brilliant. I like that. You talked about a higher need for a balance between PvE and PvP. What current imbalances do you see, and how do you want to address them?
So I wouldn't say imbalances. It would more be there's a lack of opportunities of PvE within HiSec. So I do run quite a lot of PvE level 4 missions within HiSec with a couple of my HiSec friends, and one of the things they've been begging for is level 5 missions to be introduced to HiSec because they hate going down to low sec because they're just sitting targets there because they're in PvE fit ships and going into low sec. So they've been begging for the introduction of level 5 missions into HiSec. Furthermore, I did have the idea of maybe introducing a cooperative-based, team-based PvE activity that is permanent within HiSec and across the board, mainly in HiSec, to give those players some more activities to do that don't necessarily revolve around mission agents.
Interesting. I think so. The home fronts are kind of like that, but I don't know if they hit the mark completely on home fronts. So it'd be an area
that's what I'm saying. In terms of home fronts, I mean, it's a good start, but it could be developed into something that's more enticing because at the end of the day, people in high sec want bit more things to do and better loot to get, and they want more money to make. So if you were to introduce more enticing rewards for team-based activities, then it would be a great incentive. And I have had some sort of backlash against that by saying, well, what if people just multi-box? Well, then that's just a part of the game that apparently people have to get used to, and I don't know if there's a way to combat that, but at the end of the day, if people multi-box, they multi-box.
Yeah, I can see that. I would think the home fronts, I don't know if I would multi-box the home fronts in particular, but I could see that being an issue. I know that you have experience in all regions of the game. How do you ensure that what you are looking to propose wouldn't favor an area such as nullsec or over others like highsec or lowsec?
Well, one of the points in my forum post is improving the trade regions of Heck and Rens, because they are sort of region-wide big trade hubs that don't get enough love. And the changes I would like to implement would be maybe by lowering the tax rates there so they're more favorable than going to JITA. And if you improved Heck and Rens, the high-sec, low-sec, and surrounding null-sec areas would all benefit from that because they'd have a new trade or two new trade hubs to go to buy their wares and sell their stuff. That wouldn't necessarily be a detriment to any region of the game, but more of an improvement to all three.
Sure. In terms of small groups, and I feel like this is kind of a theme with all of the CSM candidates, so it's nice that we're asking this in multiple interviews, but for helping small corporations thrive, particularly in competitive spaces like nullsec, what changes would you suggest there?
So, I've never run a corporation before, so my knowledge of corporation running and how to improve corporations is a little bit rusty. So, in terms of how you would help a corporation thrive in a space like nullsec without having sort of bend the knee to a massive null block alliance, I guess they'd need a big amount of numbers behind them so that they could then go forth and maybe join forces with one of the smaller coalitions and sort of help integrate themselves into nullsec before maybe going towards independence.
Okay. And just to wrap up our round of questions with you, how do you see CCP making the transitions for new players from highsec into other areas of the game more seamless and perhaps more rewarding for them?
Like I said earlier, just if we improve the new player experience and the onboarding to E for new players in terms of them learning more information about the game and how to play the game, and so that their skills and their ISK go up whilst they're in high sec, they would be more inclined to sort of reach out and expand their sort of position into places like nullsec by joining nullsec corporations and alliances, just by the fact that their experience within highsec has benefited them, so that they can go down to nullsec.
Nice. Any other thoughts or anything you would like to share with us before we wrap up with you?
I just want to say good luck to the rest of the candidates, and thank you for having me. It's been nice.
All right. Thank you for joining us today. Again, y'all, this is not going to be a great transition. I apologize in advance. Frippy, we'll see you again soon.
Thank you very much.
Hello.
Hi, Mick. Give me 1 second. I just
All
need to
good.
get your audio up because everybody's on a different one. There we go. I'm getting faster at it.
Great.
I'm getting faster at it, at least. That's for sure. All right, Mick. I am not familiar with you. You know what I did? I didn't move you. Let's try that again. Y'all, you should never trust me without Dave. That's a problem. It's a problem. All right. Now we should be able to hear you.
Awesome.
You know,
Hello.
There you go. All right, Mick. I am not familiar with you at all, so I am most excited about this interview. Thank you for joining us today. Can you just tell us a little bit about yourself first and your platform in running for CSM19?
Sure. So, no pressure or anything. Geez. Hey, everybody. So, I'm Mick Fightmaster. I have been playing Eve now since 2009. I kind of been through a bit of the gambit, did some high-sec mission running, did nullsec for a little bit, and then found this cool thing called Wormholes. And I was like, this is an entirely new way to play the game outside of what I've ever understood or known before, so let's try that. And ever since then, I've pretty much never looked back. I've certainly had like alts in other groups and whatnot just to kind of keep up with like what the meta is like out in K-Space. But I live and breathe Wormhole Space, and I've loved it ever since. My whole platform is essentially just an opportunity for me to make sure that I'm representing the interests of wormholers, regardless of what class of wormhole space you live in, to CCP, so that whenever changes do come up, they can understand and interpret what that impact may be on the wormhole community.
Wow. So you are definitely a strong advocate for the wormhole community. What are your top 3 issues do you see wormhole players facing that you would take to the CSM?
It depends on who you ask. I will say that. What I've done with like these interviews that I've had with other groups is kind of ask them the question, what do you like? What do you not like? What are some problems that you see? If you could like snap your fingers, wave a magic wand, what would it be? How would you change things and why? And a few things have been kind of like common themes. So one of the most common themes is bookmarks, right? Like when you live in a wormhole, you pretty much just have to have your bookmarks. So we want a bookmark cap either removed or increased, like exponentially from what it is right now. The other thing that I've gotten a lot of feedback on is we have no real intermediate conflict driver. Right now in Wormhole Space, the most common things that you'll see are going to be ganks of other people that are crabbing. You're going to see like arranged honor brawls where you're fighting either through a shared static or in someone's home, or like the rare eviction, right, where it's like the big fight where everybody comes in and it's basically you're fighting for all the marbles because there's no asset safety in Wormholes. The other issue that gets brought up a lot of times from lower class groups is that there's a really high barrier to entry to set up like a group within a wormhole. It just requires a lot of administration, a lot of logistics. There's a lot of trust that has to go into being set up within a wormhole. And there's right now it feels like there's fewer incentives to come to wormhole space. And so we would want to find a way to make people, when they see a wormhole, say, "Ooh, that looks cool, let's go in," not, "Oh, quick, roll it off," or like, "Don't go in," something along those lines.
Yeah. So in terms of wormhole space being overlooked when CCP is making game-wide challenge changes, balance changes that often focus on nullsec or highsec, what would you do to ensure that wormhole space would be considered in those changes?
Yeah, so I guess it depends, right? Like a lot of times when you think about the changes that CCP makes, it's kind of like wormhole adjacent a lot of the times, because when you're making changes to other parts of space, well, wormholes are how we who live in wormholes interact with other parts of space. And so if we're like, of course, a big one's going to be like the skyhook change. So if we're in a situation where it's like, oh, we love seeing nullsecs because now we know we can go out, we can generate small gang content or medium-sized conflict over these skyhooks, and then all of a sudden that opportunity gets taken away. That's one of the things that I've heard from a lot of folks that are especially groups that live in like nullsec statics, because that was one of the things that they absolutely loved doing. They would love going out there and that basically forcing the fight, right? And if not, they would get paid. So I think that's one of the things you have to do is just remember that wormholes are always interacting with that space, and then pay attention to special characteristics. Understand, these new ships that come out. What are they going to do in terms of how wormhole meta typically shifts and evolves? A lot of times it's brawls. Very rarely will you come into a situation where you're kiting, unless it's a larger scale, fight where kiting can be beneficial. And so, like, how would these new ships affect that? What's the mass like, right? And understanding that, of course, wormholes are always limited by mass. So it's just paying attention to those little details and understanding what the thought process is behind it.
In terms of resource balancing, I know it's one of your concerns. How would you propose CCP address resource allocation that would be better for Wormhole Space?
This one's is another interesting one. So I've also received a lot of feedback from low class and high class groups saying that they miss the old ore sites. Now, if you remember a few years ago, we kind of had like the tier side of known space where it's like you could only find spot in high sec, you could only find mex or isogen in low sec, you could only find certain ores in different areas of space. And then they removed all of those ores from the ore anoms within wormholes. Well, we're already isolated enough from the game as it is. So what one of the interesting ideas that got suggested to me was basically tier siding within wormholes. So C1s and C2s would now have the high sec ore, C3s and C4s would now have the low sec ore, C5s and C6s the null sec, so on. As a way of forcing groups to interact with other classes of wormhole space, and then also be an avenue for people who are outside of wormhole space to say, ooh, that's a C4. I really need some of the ore that exists within C4s. Let me get in there. Or, of course, the one that we always hear is we want better moons. We want a reason for people to come in and try and have a Rourke on a moon, or a reason, ice anomalies. What if we had like a rotating ice anom? Things like that.
Interesting. Just to throw you off a little, Climb and TTP just asked, how would you make it more interesting for non-wormholers to enter into wormholes? And I was kind of thinking the same thing. So that's one way you would do that.
Sure.
But coming from, and I'm still a fairly new player in the game, I do like Pochvin quite a bit, just because the no local kind of thing. But I've never really ventured into wormholes, so I am kind of interested how you would make wormholes more interesting for non-wormhole players.
Yeah, so right now for the coolest thing you could find as a non-wormholer is basically bukus of the what are they? They're the data and relic, the pirate data and relic sites. That's like the coolest thing you can find as a non-wormholer. Anytime you find a sleeper one, it's pretty much instant death if you're in any sort of scanning ship. As a non-wormhole, we just want to incentivize a reason for people to come in. Now, I'm not a game designer, but I would just like to propose to CCP to find reasons for people who are not in wormhole space to want to come there. Obviously, the connections are going to be the biggest thing, right? Because there's no local. You can basically hide an entire fleet right outside of your enemy's staging without them knowing about it. And so that's one big component of it for PvP side, but from a more of a resource or PvE side, I think there just needs to be a reason for people to come in. Right now, I don't see it, especially with gas mining getting removed, or gas requirement rather getting removed from capitals, which is I think a net positive in the sense that it should hopefully, fingers crossed, lower capital prices, but it's just removed a reason for people to come to wormhole space. So I really want to make sure that there is a reason for people to come that's interesting to them, but I don't, from a game design perspective, I'm not sure that I have like the golden nugget on that.
Sure. And just to wrap up the interview, how would you advocate for better communication and collaboration between CCP and the wormhole community to ensure that it has its continued development within that area of the sandbox?
Yeah, so obviously one of the easiest ways to do that is to hopefully have a wormhole representative on the CSM. I think that's a very easy way, but also CCP's proven to be very approachable. Even if you're not on the CSM or if you're not someone that's like got huge name recognition, that's one thing that I've noticed just in interaction with Swift and Lumi over the time being here as a candidate for CSM. They're very approachable. They're very open to ideas. So don't be shy is honestly my number one suggestion if you have an idea. But the other thing I wanted to mention is if I do get on this whole idea of what I like to call the Wormhole UN, which is essentially a Discord server that allows for one or two representatives from every wormhole group to come in and to have monthly meetings and discuss what's on their mind about wormholes, what they like, what they don't like, magic wand sort of stuff. And I'm not sure if it was part of my CCP interview or not, but it was in the post. It might have been just in the post talk where it was just the three of us, but. Lumi and Swift both asked to be included in on that Wormhole UN, which I think is a great way for us, for our community to also be able to kind of have that direct line to CCP without it necessarily having to go through me.
Oh, that's great. Any final thoughts before we say goodbye for you today?
No, just thanks for having me. I never thought I'd see the day where I had a chance to be on the INN, so appreciate the
Oh my gosh.
opportunity.
Yeah,
And
me either, but you know. I'm glad you joined us today. Good luck, and we will talk to you soon.
thank you very much.
Hello. Let me just get your sound on. All right. Oh, I lost the Oz. We get you back. He's not coming to my Discord. Hello.
Hi.
There you are. Welcome.
Hi, how are you?
We're great.
Am
I
I on my
think
camera?
we've got you up. I think we got your audio going.
Very good.
Welcome to Oz. I am not familiar with you. We've never come across each other before. So
Yep.
as we get into your interview, I'd be interested in learning a little bit more about you and your platform for CSM19.
Sure. Should we just dive in or what?
Absolutely, yeah.
Cool. So I'm Oz. I'm currently a CSM member of CSM18. I've been playing EVE since 2004. And from day one, I was basically a finance and trading player because that's my professional background, and since day one I've always tried to create spreadsheets, understand the market better than others, and so I've been more or less a market focused player since day one. And 5 years ago I started streaming EVE Online, and now I have a podcast and a video show that revolves around the EVE economy, markets, and trading. And that's going really well. And
Oh, that's awesome. I would love to just dig into a little bit more on your expertise there. What do you see for economic improvements in the game for players of all levels?
So, if we're looking at what EVE is today, we're looking at a little bit of a stagnation, and a little is probably an understatement there, because when we're looking at the destruction levels in the world and we're looking at the production levels in the world, then they're just not where they have been in the past. And so if there's one big change that I could make about the economy right now, is I would introduce more minerals. I would make mining worth it again in nullsec, because what was promised in Equinox hasn't really been delivered yet, and we're still trying to balance Equinox out right, even though we have an expansion on the horizon. So that's, I think, the number one issue right now is getting super capital prices back to maybe not 6 year ago prices pre-scarcity, but to a level where people aren't absolutely afraid to take them out and go to war and using them. And so that's even though I am not a null player, and I always say I'm the voice of reason, economically speaking, on the CSM right now, I do advocate for that, because I see the discussions, I see the feedback from the community, and I don't think we have reinvigorated nullsec enough yet.
That's great news to me. I like that, or great to hear for me. You've spoken about making the markets more accessible to new players. What steps would you advocate to make those markets more user-friendly?
So, surprisingly, I mean, one thing that I've always advocated for is, I think that market prices should be available, or at least transparent, from all regions of space, right? And from day one, I feel like CCP never wanted that in the beginning, because they wanted space to feel big. Nowadays, there's so many third-party tools, and so many people spend so much time outside of the client, that I feel like it's time to just give that transparency to people in the game, because especially new players, they come in and it's not logical for somebody coming into a science fiction world and
Yeah.
thinking, okay, I only see the prices from this arbitrary region that might end one jump over, but I can't see what's one jump over. So, those are things that I feel are legacy that made sense 20 years ago that don't make sense anymore, and I feel like they need to be changing. And one very simple change also is, if new players, when they come into the market trading window, the sell orders and buy orders are not ordered by the best one on top. So not the lowest sell order and the highest buy order on top. And so that's unfortunately a lot of times I hear of people just in the beginning making easy mistakes because they expect the sell and buy orders to be sorted, but they're not. And so that's one easy change that I'm working on right now with CCP.
Within the recent changes that CCP has made to industry and trade mechanics, what adjustments do you think are still necessary to better balance the economic activities between the different regions, high sec, low sec, and null sec?
There's one big thing about ISK sinks and ISK faucets. So the ones the elements in game that regulate money supply. And one big issue that we're having right now is that in July, CCP cut sales tax, which is the highest ISK sink in the game, by 50%, essentially without introducing a counterpart on the ISK faucet side, or like cutting ISK faucets or introducing a new ISK sink. So we're having vastly increasing money supply right now, which is always a risk for inflation. And having inflation in a game like EVE, EVE has been so good about avoiding inflation, but we're going to see it if we don't introduce a fix soon. One thing that CCP did was nerf blue loot and wormholes quite significantly by about 40% in June. And so that was a good start, and that covers about half of that sales tax reduction. But I do think that there is one region in space that is generating a ton of ISK with much lower risk and especially much fewer people than the rest, and that is Parchment. And I think that it is similar to wormholes. We need to have a look at Parchment and reduce the ISK faucets that we're seeing there, because they are vastly unchecked.
Going back to your transparency regarding economic data for players to access, what are some of your ideas on getting that information to players that CCP could put into place?
In terms of market data, I mean,
just to better inform players,
Yeah, we're very lucky in the game that we have an API that, it's acting up, especially right now. But typically speaking, the EVE API is fantastic, so we can grab all of that data out there. And I mean, with the work that I do, I spent most of my time explaining to people how to build spreadsheets in EVE Online. And so I feel like the tools are all there for people to do that, but new players aren't going to get there quickly enough, right? And so I feel like we have to be a little bit better in taking some of that stuff that is available to third-party tools and get them back into the client. Because today, even though I am one of those players that spends 90% of their time not in client, not at the game time, not in client, I feel like that needs to go up. And so something like making regional prices more available in-game is something that would directly help people spending more time in client. And I think that is the goal that we need to have.
Oh, okay. And just to round us out this afternoon, or today rather, because I know you're on a different side of the world, talking about Plex, and this was a big conversation for us last week too with one of our interviews, Plex prices and inflation. How do you propose CCP approach this issue to just ensure there's more stability in the market regarding Plex?
So the reason we have record Plex prices right now is twofold. One is that CCP raised the subscription price last year, and that's by definition already going to raise the Plex price, because Plex is the way that people pay their subscription. If you raise the subscription price to make EVE the most expensive game in the world, which it is right now in terms of subscription prices, then what you're going to do is you're going to push more people to pay the game by Plex because they cannot afford it or they don't want to afford it. And that is a completely, homemade problem by CCP. And if it was me, if I was CCP, the right answer is to take the subscription price back to $15 because it was absolutely absurd for them to raise it from $15 to $20. It's crazy. I tell them every chance I get. It was just the wrong move. But knowing CCP, they're not going to do that because it would be an admission of fault. And so the second thing that why the Plex price is high is new Eden Store sales. So they're making, instead of taking the subscription price down, they are creating a huge demand for Plex in the New Eden Store, where you can then, with 50% extractor sales or 50% Omega sales, is where you can get your value that you used to get from your subscription time when it wasn't as expensive. And so you need to either have drastic sales on Plex, which would have the same effect as reducing the subscription price, but via sales. It's just a question of, do you reduce the permanent price or have more sales? So they need to do that, or they need to incentivize people to part with their Plex stockpiles, which exist. I mean, Plex is the way that people hedge against inflation in EVE Online. And so there are a lot of veterans with humongous stockpiles of Plex, which we know because we can look at the CCP financial statements once a year, and they have to list it on there as the unrecognized revenue from unused Plex. And they need to find a way to do that. One best way to do that is to create wars, because in wars, people will want to will actually have a reason to destroy stuff, will have the reason to buy stuff, will have a reason to use that Plex that is there for strategic reasons. And so anything they can do to create wars, which is, they can't do that directly, but indirectly they can do by, for example, as I said earlier in the conversation, to get super capital prices back down again, to create incentives for large blocks to go to war and to get rid of some of that staleness that we have in the system today.
Well, thank you so much for being on CSM 18. I look forward to hearing more about you in CSM 19. Is there any other thoughts that you want to share?
No, I in my official CCP interview, I said, a lot of people look at me and think about me as someone who doesn't play the game the way maybe they do. And it to me, it hurts when people say, oh, Oz doesn't really play the game. And I just want to remind everyone and advocate for the fact that this is a sandbox game. There are so many different ways of playing it. Some involve space combat, some involve industry, some involve trading, and some involve role-playing and lore, and they're all great. And all of them existing is the reason why this game is great. And I want to tell people or let people know that they should think about that when they are casting their vote for the CSM, because I think the best CSM is a very diverse CSM with various playstyles represented, because they're going to have the best discussions and they're going to make the best decisions in the end.
That's awesome. Thank you for joining us today, folks. I'm so glad that you joined us. Thank you for just dealing with my bumbles with OBS. I promise I will get better when I'm on my own. Dave will be back with us on Wednesday. We have more CSM candidates to interview. We will be on at 2100 Eve time on Wednesday, and I hope you all have an amazing day. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Betty. Bye.